Hey friends, it's Simon Hurley and welcome to another video. Now today I'm going to be showing how to use my new Fresh Cut Flowers Slimline Peel Apart background stamp in 3 different cards, which are so much fun. And I also shared a couple of different coloring methods that are really fun and easy to finish off your cards if you don't want to go in and do a bunch of little detail coloring. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy today's video. Alright, so for this whole video, I'm going to be using this Slimline Peel Apart background stamp called Fresh Cut Flowers. Now, I really love this background stamp because although it works for slimline cards and that's how it's designed, it's a peel apart background stamp, which means that you can take out the images that are cut out of it and use those separately as well. So there's a couple different flowers and leaves that you're able to use by themselves, and I'll show you all the different ways to use them throughout today's video. It really just adds a bunch more variety to an otherwise just simple background stamp, which I really think is so awesome. You get a lot for your money. And then also you're able to take these stamps, place them right back in like a puzzle to your background stamp, and this makes it so you can stamp the full background over and over again. So I just keep it kind of on the carrier sheet to keep it all together, but I cannot wait to share the different projects I created using this. So for my slimline cards today, I like to make my slimline cards 3.5 inches by 8.5. So I just cut down my stark white cardstock to 3.5, and then the other length will be 8.5 already. So for my first card, I'm going to do some stamping using those peel apart images separately. And I'm stamping them down onto 2 sheets of stark white cardstock. On one side, I'm going to stamp down the different flowers, and on one side, I'm going to stamp down the leaves that I want to be green. Now I'm stamping them down in jet black archival ink so I can get a nice crisp black image, but also because it stays wet just long enough so I can throw over a layer of clear embossing powder. And when I heat set this, it's going to turn clear and shiny and create a nice protective layer so that that black ink stays really nice and dark and gives crisp lines throughout our coloring today. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the leaves as well. Onto a different sheet of stark white cardstock, I'm going to stamp down some of those leaves and also one of the larger leaves as well. Then I'm going to throw over another layer of my clear embossing powder. You want to do this pretty quickly because it does have a quick dry time, but once that's all done, I can then start my coloring. Now I'm going to use Nuvo Shimmer Powders for my coloring. I'm going to share a couple different ways to color in some images today, but this is one of my favorite ways. So I'm going to take some of this powder, and it comes in a really easy bottle to just kind of tap it on. You don't want to like squeeze it because a little tiny bit goes a really long way, and you'll see in just 1 second here. So I've mixed together some of the greens and some of the yellows. Mixing colors together is really fun with these to get a bunch of different tones. Then all you do is take a little bit of water in a spray bottle and just spray it down to reactivate that color and make it kind of go all over the place. It's just such a fun and unexpected watercolor. Now I dried it and I like to heat set in between layers, and then to add a little bit more texture, I went in with one of the darker greens again. And the cool part is you can layer it up, and I like the way that that darker green just added a little bit of depth and dimension in some areas. Now same thing for these flower images. This is why I did it separately because they kind of burst all over the place. I did add a little bit of green to that leaf area in that one bud, and then I'm going to add some yellow in the center, some pink and red, and they're pretty easy to control where you want the colors to go with that little bottle. Then again, I'm going to go in and spray with lots of water. You can see that color is just so bold, so vibrant, and reactivates really beautifully. And then I'll heat set that until it's nice and dry again. These are also cool because when you tilt them in the light, they got a lot of shimmer in them. Now then I'm going to cut them out and do a little bit of fussy cutting. I know that a lot of people don't love fussy cutting, but here are some tips to kind of help. I like to go in with these Fiskars Spring Assist scissors. They're my favorites because they've got a really nice fine tip, but they also spring back out at you so your hand doesn't get tired. They are absolute game changers for cutting things out. And I also like to recommend to move the cardstock instead of your scissors. It provides for a nice smoother line, and I find that instead of moving my scissors and kind of making the edge jagged, that helps as well. So once I fussy cut those all out, I'm going to start working on the background quickly. I'm going to use this Simon Hurley Create stained glass stencil and a little bit of over the moon ink to do my ink blending. Now you'll see this is a 6x6 stencil, and I want it to span across the whole length of my slimline card. And I'll share how to do that in just a second. So I'm going to do my blending up until about halfway through the stencil, and I'm going to kind of fade my color up a little bit. Then I can lift the stencil, shift it upwards, and line up the exact same design with the part that's already stenciled. Then I can continue my blending, and you'll see that I'm going to have to do that one more time here. So I'll lift up my stencil, realign it with that exact same pattern that's going on, and then continue my blending throughout the whole background. This is a really great way to stretch your stencils to whatever size card you want it to be. Whether you have a larger card or a slimline card, that helps a lot. Now I also like to go in with that same ink pad, this is the Over the Moon ink, and I'm just going to go right around the edges to add a little bit of shading to the edge. This helps to kind of highlight the center and draw your eye in the center by adding a little bit of shading to the outer edge. Now I'm going to use a sentiment from the Sentimental Flowers stamp set. I love this one. You can see just how well used and loved it is. It's got some great basic sentiments in it. And I'm just going to go for a quick and easy thank you card today. So I'm going to add that to my acrylic block and stamp it down into some clear Versamark ink on my black cardstock. Then I'll throw over a layer of white embossing powder, and then I'm going to heat that up so that it gives a nice bold impact on today's card. I love white embossing against black cardstock. Also, if you notice how just black and velvety that cardstock is, I have it linked down below. It's black alcohol ink cardstock. It really is a game changer for a super crisp black cardstock. So then I'm going to line up my flowers, and I'm not an expert or a florist at all. I just kind of move things around until they look right. I like to do kind of leaves in clusters of 2, and then I also like to make my flowers kind of span throughout the card in a pathway, as you can see there. Now, once I've found the exact selection, I like to take a picture of it, and then I like to not move the flowers and just add a little bit of liquid adhesive down to tuck the leaves underneath the flowers. Then for the flowers, I like to go in with a little bit of foam tape, because I like them to stand off and pop off the card, so that those are the dimension and focal point for the images today, so that those flowers really stand out on today's card. Then once I've added everything together onto a tomato soup card base, I love how this looks. You can see that beautiful shimmer in those color Nuvo powders. And I also love how we were able to use those images separately to create our own beautiful flower clusters on any size card. For the second card, I want to share another fun and easy way to color in a background stamp like this. Today I'm going to go in with the Karin Brush Marker Pros, but you can use any water-based marker. I chose these for a couple different reasons. I just like how juicy and vibrant they are as markers, but also the tip of the marker is really, really great. It seems to be a nice sturdy, almost Copic-like nib if you've used those before, and they kind of really hold up to lots of coloring. And today I'm coloring on a stamp which has a little bit of texture, and I haven't noticed that the markers fray or do anything like that. I still do like to take precaution though and color with kind of the side of the tip of the marker, but the really awesome part about coloring in a stamp like this is you're able to go in with several different colors, and since those markers have a really great fine point on them, I'm able to color in all of the detail really super easily. So I went in with the first flowers and did lots of different shading with oranges and yellows. On these I'm doing pinks and purples. And then if you also notice, if you get any darker color onto a lighter color nib, you can just scribble it out until it comes out of the marker and it won't be damaged at all. So this doesn't take any precision or any detail, which I love about it. You just simply glide your marker over top of the stamp and color it in. Now then I'm going to spray it with a little bit of water to reactivate all of that marker, and then stamp it down onto a piece of my stark white cardstock. I like to stamp with the stamp facing upwards, and I like to use this little pressure tool called the Debbie. I think it really helps to kind of press things down and make sure everything is transferred. And there we have our beautifully stamped background. I love the bold and vibrant color in that, and how we were able to color every single little area with the markers. I'm going to spray it down once more time and do another pull without coloring anything more, and you get this a little bit more washed out version, but I love that because we colored that in and took the time, we were able to get 2 different prints and 2 cards out of the same background. Now for this card, I'm going to go in with the exact same colors of ink in Simon Hurley Create colors that kind of matched similarly, and I'm just going to go around the edge and give a little bit of shading to where each color was colored in. This makes it so that, again, it adds a little bit of depth and dimension by shading the edges and bringing your eye to the center by keeping it a little bit brighter. I think it just finishes things off a little bit nicer on the edges, which I think is awesome. So once I'm done adding that color down, I can then go in with the sentiment. And I love this sentiment from the lovely Lantanas set. This just says, "You are so much stronger than you think," and I white heat embossed that onto some black cardstock. It's just such a great encouraging sentiment. So I added that down, and it finishes off the card really simply and beautifully. And again, I love how that coloring didn't take too much time at all, but I got 2 beautiful backgrounds out of it with lots of vibrant color. Now for the last and final example, I'm taking the full background stamp and stamping it down with a little bit of clear sticky Versamark ink. So I'll ink that up, and then I'll press my cardstock into it, again using a little pressure tool here, and just apply pressure so that it all transfers. Once that's all complete, I can peel that off and add a little bit of clear heat embossing powder over top of this. I'm going to add that down all over the background, tap off any of the excess, and then we can go in and do our heat embossing. Now when I heat set this, I'm going to wait until it turns clear and shiny and then move on to the next part. This is going to create a beautiful resisted background wherever those lines are. To color it in, I'm using my Hurley Great ink pads, and I'm going to do a little bit of blending. Now for this first one, I want to get into some smaller little details, so I'm using the detail ink blending tools. These are really great. They're the same little sponge, but they're on a little tiny applicator, so I can get into the details like the centers or some of the different leaves, and then I can finish off my blending with some of the larger blending tools like I'm using here. So when I go into larger areas like these flowers, I'll kind of add my shading with the larger tools, and these are the domed blending tools, so I don't have to worry about any harsh edges as I'm blending it out either. Now for the next flower, I'm going to go into another smaller area with this pink to add a little bit of shading and depth and dimension. So I'll use my detail blending tools again, and then I can soften it out with a little bit of my purple Sidewalk chalk ink. And I like to kind of fade it out into the edges. You don't need to be too detailed when you're coloring with the inks at all. You just want a nice wash of color over the whole background. And I find it super easy to go in with kind of a lighter color with my bigger blending tool, and then I'll go in with the little detail blending tools like you'll see here. I'll go in and add a little bit of darker green to those areas where I want the shading to be or where I want to highlight where the different leaves are. That is really easy for me to do. And these little detail blenders come in, I think, a pack of 5, and they're dual-ended too. So they're very versatile, and I like to use them to get into small little areas that you wouldn't usually be able to get into with ink pads. So this has been a game changer for my coloring, and this is a lot easier than coloring in lots of different details if you don't enjoy that. So then I'm going to go in and add a little bit of detail to finish off the card by going in and just fussy cutting right around one of the edges of the flowers to kind of cut that background in half in a more detailed manner. So once I've done that to add a bit of interest, I can then work on my card base. Now for a slimline card, I like to cut it to 7 inches, and then I score it at a 4-bar card, which is 3.5 inches. And it's a little too long for my scoreboard, so I just flip it over and score it at the same measurement on the other side. Then I can flip it over and score it down with my Teflon bone folder. Now to finish the card off, I'm going to stamp down this same background in the fake plant color, which will kind of be a nice tone-on-tone background for my green cardstock there. I'll then add a little bit of pressure down to make sure it all transfers, and there we have our beautiful tone-on-tone background with those flowers. Super easy. Then to finish off the card, I'll stamp down the I appreciate you so much sentiment from the lovely Lantanas stamp set, and there we have our finished card. I love all the color we were able to add with those different ink pads and the little detail ink blending tools, and finish it off with that tone-on-tone beautiful background for this card. Alright guys, leave me a comment down below and let's chat which card was your favorite from today's video. I also hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up and click that subscribe button so you never miss another card making and crafting video like this one from me. Alright guys, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for spending time with me, and I'll see you all soon. Bye!